Okay.
Good morning, everyone. Today is the 28th of June, 2020, and welcome as usual on Sunday mornings and some places Sunday afternoons. This morning we have a very special guest from Argentina, over there, Mónica Rodriguez. She's a graduate teacher of English and a sworn public translator. She holds a postgraduate degree in human resources management by Universidad de Belgrano, and she is a certified and accredited Neurolanguage Coach. Mónica is also a mindfulness practitioner graduated from University of California and holds a diploma in social and emotional learning from San Diego University. As a teacher trainer, she has delivered professional development courses on various topics. She specializes in social and emotional learning and mindfulness for education. She currently runs her own educational institution, Inspired Consultora Educativa, reaching out to hundreds of students and teachers in Latin America. She has been implementing social and emotional learning programs at education institutions for the last 5 years. She has also presented extensively in Argentina, Uruguay, Chile, Colombia, Braztesol Brazil, IATEFL UK, Peru, Germany, TESOL France, and TESOL Spain, with plenary and semi-plenary and workshop sessions. She has authored 3 social and emotional learning sections and activities for different levels and books. Today, she will be presenting the topic, Keeping the Heart in Mind in Times of Educational Crisis and Emotional Development Tools for Teachers. Let's give her a warm round of virtual applauses.
Yeah. Thank
you very much, Mónica. Thank you very much for your time.
It's my pleasure to be here today. And the idea is to share some of my experience, to share some ideas with you, some exercises if you want to join me in doing some activities together. Because I thought about dividing this session into 2 different areas, right? First of all, I would like to have like an interactive session where we'll be discussing, I will be asking you about your own experiences, okay, in the different countries that you are right now located. And also I will be sharing some ideas in terms of implementing social and emotional learning in our classes. As you all know, social and emotional learning is extremely important for the development of our students and for our own development as well as teachers. When I am asked about this journey of developing affective skills and social skills, I always say that it's a kind of transformational journey for teachers as well, right? So this session, Keeping the Heart in Mind when Teaching, is about reflecting a little bit on some strategies we could use with our students at these times of pandemic, where we have learned, and probably you will agree with me, that the relevance of our social and emotional environment has become truly explicit, right? We have all become aware because of our own personal realities and because of our professional realities, that regulating our emotions, becoming aware of our emotions, socializing and helping other people thrive through education is absolutely crucial these days. Now that we have moved our teaching mostly online, this reality has become very, very explicit and very real for all of us, right? So today I would like to share, I will start sharing my presentation now, and you can tell me if you can see it as soon as I start sharing it. Can you see it? Can you see my presentation there?
Yes, we can see it.
Perfect. Okay. So As Jaime was telling you in the introduction, I am a teacher. I am a teacher of English. Then I studied many other different things, but I am a teacher at heart. I am an educator at heart. And I have always been interested in a more rounded, a more whole approach to education. I have always had the feeling that education, and in our case as teachers of English, is far more than just teaching the language, okay? As educators, we are emotional beings. We are constantly dealing with conflict in our classrooms. We are constantly helping our students with their emotional needs. It is something that is kind of intrinsic for us educators. So what I have been specializing and studying during the last 5 years is how to implement social and emotional learning programs for our students within the space of our English classes, yes, so as to help them become basically better people, better citizens, better friends, better husbands, better wives, better workers in the future. We all know that the importance of skills these days, what used to be called soft skills, is really very interesting and very relevant. And even in the workplace, and we are preparing, of course, students to go out there in the world and thrive. And if we really want to do this, we have to keep this notion of understanding our students are whole beings and not just as brains, you know? I think that the educational system has been for a very long time focused on develop only cognitive skills. So my proposal with the implementation of different programs is to, of course, have a focus on the development of cognitive skills, that is our brain skills, but at the same time, trying to contribute for our students to learn more about themselves, about how to interact with others, about teamwork, about empathy, about building skills such as resilience, grit, how to, restart and try again when we fail, what is our connection with mistakes in life, and so on. And so the idea today is to share some ideas, and you will see that I will share some ideas and I will go back to you because I really want to have a conversation with all of you, yes, so that you can tell me your questions, your realities, your challenges, right, with your students' population. And I will be jumping in the presentation to also have the possibility of sharing with you what is happening in the world of education in terms of affective learning and social and emotional learning, because fortunately, so far we've got very relevant, impactful references and research on the field, okay? So this is basically what I wanted to do with you. And I wanted to start doing an activity together. Yes, will you join me in doing this? This is an emotional check-in activity, okay? So I will invite you right now, because at some point of my presentation, I will also be speaking about our own wellness as teachers, yes? What's the importance of our own well-being, of our own emotional balance as teachers. So let's start with a little bit of that, with a little bit of self-reflection. What is your level of energy and pleasantness at this very moment, okay? And you can see that in the scale of energy, we've got from -5 to 5, okay? And in the scale of pleasantness, we've got from -5 to 5. Let me tell you, my dear teachers, that before COVID-19, my scale, this scale used to be 0 to 5. But now, of course, I have modified the scale And we have from 0 to below 0 up to -5, okay? Because these are hugely challenging times for all of us at all levels, at a teaching level, for students as well, at our personal life. So I decided to change the scale just to be real for these times, okay? So my point is, I want you to place yourselves from -5 to 5 in terms of your energy at this very moment, and the same for pleasantness. And when you do that, if you join those two values, okay, you will be in one of those squares, maybe in the yellow area, maybe in the green area, where those 2 points meet is where you are right now in terms of these energy and pleasantness levels, okay? So take a moment just for you to reflect on where you are right now. This is an emotional check-in. And then I will tell you some more ideas to use this with students, okay? So let's take a moment to reflect on this. I will also do it with you because I think it's a good exercise.
Okay.
So for example, in my case, I guess I am somewhere in the yellow quadrant. And I would say that it's like dark yellow in my case. So what about you?
Let me read. Some people has written 1.9 okay. Tom, 2.3 Isis, 3.3 Gloria, okay. 1.1 Irma, and Jaime 2.3.
Okay, so as you can see, we are all at different places, right? And in fact, if we did this exercise, maybe at the end of our session today, or if you did this exercise at the beginning of the week, or at the end of the week, or during the day, our results would be different, okay? And this is my first point, and a very important one that I would like to share with you. When we talk about emotions, when we talk about our emotional universe, and when we talk about a healthy emotional world, we need to know that emotions change all the time, okay? So probably if we did this same exercise by the end of our session today, maybe your numbers would be different because this is the nature of our emotional world, okay? Emotions, when we are in a healthy state, come and go like the waves of the ocean. This is something very important, not only for us to learn and for us to take into account, but also very important information to share with our students. No matter what age and what age range we are teaching. My point is, there is nothing wrong in being in low numbers. There is nothing wrong in feeling exhausted. There is nothing wrong in feeling sad, in feeling frustrated, in feeling anxious, that are the most common feelings we are going through at these very specific times. So this is something that you will probably, and I'm sorry, I have to apologize in advance because I will be repeating myself over and over this concept, because one of the most common misconceptions from our students' perspective, and in many cases our own perspective as humans and as teachers, is that we are our emotions, and we are not, okay? Emotions come and go, and there is nothing wrong about feeling angry, about feeling frustrated, about feeling all these difficult emotions, and I will talk a little bit more about this later on. But the point is, we need to embrace our emotions. We need to give ourselves permission to feel. This is one of my top 5 phrases I'm using during these times. We really need to give ourselves permission to feel. This does not mean that we will accept any kind of behavior from our students, okay? I am not saying that because it is absolutely natural and okay to feel angry, yes, you will have to hurt someone else's feelings or in any other possible way. One thing that we need to understand about our emotional and social development is that we are not our emotions, okay? We have to embrace all type of emotions, even the difficult ones, but we need to be very careful how those emotions impact our behavior. And that is a completely different story, okay? Let me just give you an example. If you teach young students, you probably know, and I say young students, but it could be any of us, because adults in many cases behave in the same way. You must have been in 100 situations where students who feel very, very angry start shouting at someone else, or they even kick a friend, yes? Or they react in ways that are not appropriate, that are not acceptable, okay? And that is definitely clear. There are things that are acceptable and things that are not acceptable. But that is the realm of behavior, not the realm of the emotion, okay? It's not the emotion's fault, it's how we react to it. So one of the most important things we need to transmit to our students at these times is that we are all feeling bad, frustrated. All our brains, because of the nature and because of the conditions of this pandemic, our brain is under a lot of pressure. And the backbone emotion that we all feel is fear. This is a very serious situation we are going through. This is a situation that is threatening not only our health, but the health of people we love. So naturally, our cognitive system, our brain, is in survival mode. I'm sure you've heard about this. When our brain is in survival mode, we can only think about fight or flight response. Remember? We cannot, and what happens with our brain in this state is that all the higher functioning of the brain, like analysis, like reflection, like critical thinking, like problem solving, do not happen when our brain is in this survival mode. So the first thing we need to learn and teach our students to do is that it's okay to feel, no matter how you feel. And another thing that is very important is that we can do things to regulate our emotions. And we will talk about that in a second. This is very important because even when we are extremely angry, when we are extremely frustrated or very sad, there are things we can do to influence that emotion and change it for the better. So this is another very important concept about our emotional world, okay? So what do you think about this idea? I would like to hear you now telling me some ideas about this first thing that we have done, that is an emotional check-in. And then I will give you some details on how you can use this with students, okay? What do you think about it?
Two things that I like that you have just mentioned, Monica. Survival mode. I love that because it's true. We are in a survival mode because of economic problems, because of job, because of a lot of homework, a lot of exercises, correcting exams. And the other thing that I like what you say is to regulate our emotions. I've always heard about controlling, but I think it's much better regulating your emotions. I just wanted to say that. I don't know if there's somebody else.
And what you mentioned, Jaime, is really very important, because what I want to say is that we should not dominate our emotions, okay? Emotions happen, and this is the nature of emotions. But what we can do precisely is to regulate, okay? We can do things so as to feel better. But one of the most common misconceptions precisely of emotional regulation is that we should control our emotions. And it is definitely not the case, okay? We really have to become aware of those emotions. And precisely this exercise that I have just shared with you, and I'm looking for my slide so that I can share it with you. This exercise, this emotional check-in that I've just shared with you, has to do with the different areas that I use to work for social and emotional development. So this emotional check-in that we have just done is on the self-awareness part of this wheel that I'm sharing, okay? And it is where we should start. We should always start with reflections about ourselves, because if we want to regulate emotions, first we need to become aware of them. How many times have you seen students, how many times have you felt that someone tells you, you hurt me when you said that. That was really hurtful. Why did you say it? And you were not even aware that you were hurting someone else with your words, okay? How many times have you met students that they are not really conscious of their level of aggressiveness towards others? And when you tell them about it, they say, I had no idea, I didn't realize about this. Because of this very important area of social and emotional development, that is self-awareness. We have not been given, unfortunately, by the whole system of education, tools in order to recognize our own emotional states, okay? And in many cases, we confuse feeling angry with feeling frustrated. Or we say, I am very angry. But in fact, it's not that you are angry. Maybe you are in pain at some other level, but we call it anger. See my point? So this question of that you bring up, Jaime, of the brain is very important, because again, our brains are very stressed at this moment. Not only because of our particular conditions of teaching right now. Probably I would like to hear how is your teaching changed in these times of pandemic. But in general, we are overworked. We are working very long hours. We are working far more than we used to in terms of preparation of our online classes, preparing materials, following up on students, correcting, and all the dimensions of being a teacher. But apart from that, naturally our brain is in this state. That's why, do you know what is the most common emotion that is being felt around the globe in times of pandemic? Which emotion would you say is number one around the world during these days?
Anxiety?
Yes, Nora, exactly. Anxiety is the
Tom wants to participate. Please, if you want to participate, raise your hand. Tom?
I think maybe I'm a bit unusual, but I feel very inspired at the moment. I'm producing on me. Obviously, it's very challenging and it's a lot of work, but I'm just having some fantastic interactions with my students, and I think
I love that.
And I feel more inspired than I was in the physical classroom, to be honest. So
that is an excellent point, Tom, because this is another thing that teachers are telling me all the time. In many cases, for example, students that did not used to participate or that were not that active in
¿Puedes
the
traer el bastoncito para mirar el video?
They are far more
para ponerle al teléfono.
Okay.
Sorry, I couldn't hear that. Sorry, Monica, I couldn't hear that.
Yeah. So what I was saying is that many teachers are sharing these inspirational stories of students that did not used to participate in class, for instance, when we were in a face-to-face interaction. And now that we are online, they are far more participative, for example.
We in my particular school, we're adopting a new methodology. We were doing it before COVID, but we've had to adapt it. It's fantastic. It's really amazing. This week I had a student say to me, a 13-year-old student say to me, teacher, like, thank you 13 years old, said, thank you, teacher. Your classes in trimester 1 were just so fun and so interactive. And I was like, you're 13 and I want to cry. And it just inspires me. I think if we can use this situation as an excuse that we've got all these obstacles, or I'm actually using this as an opportunity to engage more with my students and launch my own business. So I think we're actually in a fantastic, the main thing is our health. So I'm very fortunate that everyone around me, my loved ones, my friends, my family are all well. That's the number one.
Absolutely.
But apart from that, I just feel like working from home, you can regulate your own time so much better. So I feel very inspired, actually, which is probably strange.
And I think, Tom, because while you are telling us that you feel very inspired, we've got other teachers sharing that they feel absolutely frustrated. This is a characteristic of these times. And it will go back to you, Tom, with many ideas today, because I do think that one of the better strategies we can use to cope with this situation as teachers is connect with opportunities during these times. Okay. And
it gives us I think it gives us a void, right? Because I've got certain voids. Like for example, I'm a big passion. I love football. I love playing football. I don't have that in my life anymore. So I've got to fill that void with something else.
Absolutely.
Something else to distract us, because if we spend our whole time glued to the television and look at how many lives have been lost, because lives are going to continue to be lost for a long time. That's the reality of it.
That's
but
true.
we have to find a way that gets us up in the morning that has this, and it's about a long-term vision, where what's going to get us to the thing that's going to give us the most financial freedom in 5-10 years, that's going to allow us just to feel so inspired about getting up every morning, whether we're in a virtual world or whether we're going into the physical world. That's just how I see it right now.
Mm-hmm. And in many aspects, I do agree. I do agree with you, Tom, because in many aspects, I feel something similar. But I do know that there are many other teachers that are on the point of breakdown, I would say.
Oh, totally. You asked me a personal question about myself, and I do empathize completely. I'm not judging anyone. I'm not judging anyone that is in that situation. No. I'd love to support. For example, this week, unfortunately, in our team, we've had very sad news. A fantastic teacher in my school team, and he's lost his mother to COVID. So it's the reality of it. It's just personal to me, and I completely empathize. And Jaime does such a wonderful job in this community to rally us all together and have that connection. So I totally agree. I'm just saying from a personal point of view, I'm not judging anyone that's not feeling positive. It's just where I am right now.
And I definitely agree with you at many different aspects. And one of my objectives today is precisely to start, reflecting on the idea of, okay, no matter what limitations we are going through, there is always an opportunity. And we will talk about this question of, remember I mentioned at the beginning, this question of embracing all of our emotions, especially the difficult ones. But one of the concepts I'm talking about a lot today is the concept of, okay, one of the most important things to know is there are no positive or negative emotions. Yes, probably you've heard a lot about negative emotions, okay? All these ones we are going through each day. And what happens is that the scope of different emotions we are feeling is really very, very, very big, right? At one point of the day, we might feel inspired and we might have these messages from students that make us feel really good feelings. And at some other points of the day, it's like a roller coaster. We are going up and down all the time. That's another characteristic. And we might be in very different spectrums in terms of how we feel about what's happening. But it's also very important, this concept I'm sharing these days of hacking our emotions. Let me just find in my presentation a slide for that. That's why I told you I would be jumping, you know, from one thing to the other. And it's this question of hacking our emotions. As I said before, we've got emotions that is not that they are negative. They are emotions that are a little bit more difficult to deal with, right? Anxiety, fear, frustration, anger, sadness. All these emotions are parts of our biosystem, ecosystem, yes? Let me give you an example. Let's think about our emotional world as a jungle, okay? Let's imagine that we have a jungle in front of us, and in that jungle, in that ecosystem, we've got all sorts of animals. We've got some animals that are lovely, right? We've got beings like beautiful flowers, like orchids in the jungle, like all these patches of sun and the presence of nature all around you that are uplifting. In the same ecosystem, we also have other beings. Let's think about insects, spiders, snakes, all these animals that we don't like that much, that are difficult to face, difficult to look into the eye. Our emotional world is similar. It is made up of emotions that are more afflictive, not negative, are more afflictive, are more difficult to deal with, like the ones I mentioned before. And then we've got other emotions that elevate us, such as gratitude, such as being connected to our purpose, such as compassion and self-compassion. And I would like to do together today an exercise on self-compassion for teachers, because I think it's really important to value our efforts. And all these emotions are these emotions that help us cope with the other ones, okay? So there is nothing wrong with these animals in the jungle that we don't like so much. Even if we don't like them, even if we don't like the mosquitoes, even if we don't like the snake, even if we don't like the spiders, they are part of the balance in this universe. They have a role, they have an intelligence. So let me tell you a little bit, because these emotions that are the afflictive emotions, all these difficult beings in our jungle, have a very bad name, right? They have a very bad fame. They have a very negative fame. But let me just tell you about the gift of these emotions we are feeling. What is the gift? What is the intelligence of fear, for example? Fear is one of the most intelligent emotions because it is about our own self-preservation. Fear is what informs us about things that are dangerous for us. It is a preservation skill. I'm talking about fear, not about panic. Panic hijacks your mind and does not allow you to move forward. I'm talking about fear. Fear can inform us. Sadness is one of our most intelligent emotions, because sadness is this emotion that allows us to realize which things are important for us and which things are not. What are the things and the people we care for? Because we never feel sad about things we really don't appreciate, right?
Just a minute, Monica. Sorry,
yeah.
There are two teachers who have been asking. They say, unlike you and Tom, they say that they feel frustrated. One of them says, my students are in the highlands where there is just WhatsApp, no other connection, and I feel frustrated because I can't help them. And then somebody else said, good morning from Santo Domingo, Ecuador. How can we deal with these emotions so they do not affect negatively on us? So it's something opposite of what Tom mentioned. Sorry to interrupt.
And precisely, this is this variety of different emotions we are all feeling. We can be at very different positions in this range of emotions, and that is absolutely okay, because we are living different realities and we are connecting to these realities as best as we can. So my answer to the question, what can we do about these afflictive emotions, is, first of all, we have to give ourselves, and our students have to give themselves permission to feel that emotion. Because when we talk about emotional regulation, you first need to recognize the emotion. Give it space in your life. Understand that emotion not as something negative, but with some information that has to share. And then the question is precisely, how do we move from that emotion? And this is my suggestion. If we want to turn down the volume of those afflictive emotions, yes, such as frustration, such as fear, and so on, we need to activate our cognitive memory so as to interrupt that emotion with a more elevated one. Have a look at what I'm sharing on the screen. What if we interrupt anxiety with gratitude? What if we interrupt an emotion that is frustration with a memory of joy? What if we interrupt sadness with a self-compassion feeling, or with a self-compassion exercise? This is what I mean when I say hack afflictive emotions. Because remember what I said at the beginning, there is nothing wrong with those emotions as long as they don't stay. Okay? When anxiety, frustration, fear, and sadness stay for a long time, that is no longer healthy for us. Is it clear? Yeah? I am reading now Priscilla that says, give us some clues to work with teenagers, because if I am strictly, they become rebel. If I am the contrary, like kind of they don't obey. Okay, what's the best way to connect with them? Priscilla, what I would say, what I can share in terms of teenagers, I can share my experience working with them. And it's really very difficult, because when we have to talk to teenagers about emotions and about sharing their emotions and so on, in general, they don't want to do it. And that is perfectly normal, and that is perfectly okay. The first thing that I do with teenagers is to share information with them about the importance of becoming aware of our emotional world. I use examples that are real for them, not for me, okay? So sometimes I share ideas or stories about TikTokers that they know. Some other times I share information and stories about sportsmen that they may admire. So the first thing we need to take into account, and I think that you will all agree with me, when we are teaching teenagers, whatever it is that we want to teach them, whether it is English, whether it's about information about their emotional world, is we need to step into their world. We cannot teach them from our world because we will never connect. We have to step inside their world and teach from there. But another thing that has been useful for me in teaching teenagers how to develop social and emotional skills, and I am also a mindfulness practitioner. And mindfulness is even more difficult to deal with teenager students. So one of the things that has worked for me is sharing information about how the brain works, okay? And asking them questions such as, would you like to know how to deal with your difficult emotions when you're feeling down, when you're feeling blue, and so on? Would you like to know how to regulate when you're feeling extremely angry? Do you know what happens in the brain? So sharing information about neuroscience, sharing information about the brain, and taking that to their own world. What are the situations where you feel down, okay? What are those situations where you feel frustrated? In these times, for example, when do you feel frustration during online classes? Because this is the approach we need to be taking, right? Thinking about emotions in this context, the one we are sharing right now, okay? So for example, the other day I was sharing an exercise to do with teenagers at the end of your class that is related to emotional metacognition, okay? What does this mean? And I will share the questions, if you allow me, I will share the questions in the chat so that that you can all have it. This is a metacognition, an emotional metacognition exercise with some questions. You know that metacognition is about understanding how we think. In this case, when I talk about emotional metacognition, is understanding how we feel about things, okay? So the first thing to refer to success, what was good during the class, yes? Questions such as, what did you feel was a success during this class? Okay? And be careful about my question. I'm not asking you, what was a success in this class? Or when it was successful? I'm asking, what did you feel was a success? And maybe something that they consider was great during that class is not exactly what you think or what you wanted to teach. So, first point of the exercise. What did you feel was a success during the class? Second question, and this is when we move into challenges. At what moment did you feel a challenge? This is when things go wrong, we talk about those things as challenges. You know that, okay? At what moment did you feel a challenge? I'm not asking you about the challenge itself, but when you felt it was a challenge, and at what moment you felt it. And the second part, the third moment of the metacognition exercise, is about what I call the bridge. That is new ideas. So, was there any new idea during this class? And how do you feel about that new idea? So all my questions are related to the emotional world. How do you feel about this new idea, for example? Okay, so this, for example, is a way to start introducing emotions during our teaching practices and emotional reflection about that. But coming back to the question, how to connect with students, okay? It's really important to step into their world, to share information about how the brain works, to share information with them. Why would these things be useful for them? Because this is basically what teenagers will ask you about. Why do I need to learn about emotions? What's the impact of that? Okay, what will I gain from it?
What about this idea, Monica? Silvina from Argentina, but based in Colombia, she says she tends to use an exit slip after her classes.
That is an excellent idea, and I use exit slips all the time because I love them. My suggestion is, let's adapt the exit slip so that it does not focus only on content.
Could you explain a little bit, because maybe some of us are not familiar with this term?
Okay, exit slips are questions, or in fact, post-its or pieces of paper, where at the end of the class, for example, you ask students, what did you learn today? This is like one of the typical examples of an exit slip, okay? Of course, then you can sophisticate that question and make it more related to metacognition and so on. But an exit slip is basically where students share with you what they learned during the class. So my suggestions, because I do love exit slips, is include emotions in your exit slip. So if you ask students, what did you learn today? You can also have another sub-question. How did you feel about this? Or how did you feel during the class? What emotions did you experience? And this could be an exit slip that will give you a lot of information, not only about the cognitive aspects of what you taught, but also about the emotions that were involved on the student's side. And this is very valuable information, because you really need to know what your students are feeling in the class. Because the emotional world is what powers our cognitive abilities. So if there is a very high level of sadness or frustration or whatever in your classes, that will be something that will be an obstacle in your teaching, basically. Okay, so my point is, even if you don't care about the emotional world, as a teacher, you need to. Yes, we do this.
A question,
The
Monica,
KWL charts can definitely be adapted to this too. Again, from the emotional point of view, okay?
Sorry, go on.
No, just that.
I have a question. Would it be a good idea, Monica, to mention to ask our students if me as a teacher created that feeling in them? Would it be okay or not?
I think that as teachers, we are always creating different atmospheres in our classes, right? And some things are up to us to adapt or modify, and some other things are not, and they are part of their own emotional worlds. But the information is always useful, you know? There might be things that you can do about that, but it is extremely important that no matter what technique you use, so it could be the exit slips, it could be this emotional metacognition exercise I shared, it could be the KWL chart, whatever technique you use, you really need to be careful, especially with teenagers, I would say, but with all levels, to really pay attention and read what they have to share and act accordingly. Do you see my point? My point being, if you really open up that space, and I am going to align my answer to what Jaime was also asking, you really need to be up to the circumstances to embrace whatever answers you get. And many of those answers might be very uncomfortable for us. And we have to deal with that. because one of the things that I believe it's a kind of professional deformation, I would say, in teaching, is that in general, we teach the way we think our students are learning. And in many cases, we use a lot of strategies. And if you really ask, if we really ask our students openly, with a curious mind, yes, when you really want to actively listen to what they have to say, they might tell you, I'm not learning with this strategy. This is not working for me. And we thought as teachers that this was the best strategy. So we did it from our best intention. But our students are not receiving that as something that is good for them. And I think that this information is absolutely valuable, even when it hurts, okay? Even we prepared like a lot of materials and we did a lot of things because we thought that this video was the best strategy. Maybe they don't need your video. Maybe they need to talk to a peer. And maybe they need to learn from a peer, not only from you. So if we create these strategies, it is very important that we take the information and act on that information, because students are constantly watching us. And as I always say, it's the same with our kids. They don't learn from what we say. They learn from what we do. My point being, you might create your beautiful metacognition strategy. If you don't act accordingly to the information they share, they will never believe in you again, because it's just a technique.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Luz Canales and Tom Collis. Luz? Luz Canales?
Yes, I'm here.
You were writing something.
Yes.
Could you express it by yourself?
I was telling about that was an idea to include about emotion, like Monica mentioned. That is wonderful for me, no, to do during my class and after.
Thank you. And then Tom?
No, just saying it's very interesting, and what you say, Monica, makes a lot of sense. And I think sometimes we've got to. I think the word that resonated the most with me is when you said curious. Don't ask a question, having already answered your own question, because it's not about us. It's not about feeling. How do you say? Reassuring ourselves. It's not about reassuring ourselves. The class is about our students. So even if there's, even if we spent, doesn't matter if we spent 15 hours preparing a particular thing, but if it doesn't work for our students, then it's not effective. The class is about them, not us. So it's about going into a question without the answer, going into the question being curious as to what their answer is. I think that's really interesting.
And this is what we talk about when we talk about student centricity, right? And active listening. And I think that in many cases, we really struggle as teachers with this. Let me just ask you this question. How many times do you find yourself as teachers completing your students' answers? Like they start to say something and we finish off the sentence. How many times do you ask a question to your students and you answer yourself your own question? This is something we do all the time. Because one of the things that we teachers feel uncomfortable about is silence. It is not comfortable for us.
I think
so,
I think we in online platforms, we tend to avoid that silence, but I think it's also important to give them that thinking time, and what you were saying about being prepared for any kind of answers, that leads us to be prepared on the topics as well. I mean, we are going to have our lessons, our content in teaching English, grammar, vocabulary, skills, but I think we also need to get prepared on this emotional field. So if you can later share with us some references, so to be more knowledgeable on that side.
Absolutely.
I have always thought that teaching English or teaching a language is it's a privilege. They have always asked me how it feels to be a teacher, and I think it's such a privilege to teach a language, because the content itself, it's about their own likes and dislikes, holidays, family, emotions. Whereas in classes as history, geography, there's a specific content, but here the students open up themselves to you, and you share so much info, so.
And I agree 100% with many of your ideas in terms of we are privileged to be teachers in the first place. This is something that we should not forget about. I know that these are times of frustrations. Many of you are expressing that. But again, take yourself the time, and this is when I'm moving into a little bit of our own well-being as teachers. Take yourself the time to remember those moments when students shared with you how much we've changed their lives. To what extent what we share and what we teach has been useful for them. This is a blessing of being a teacher, and we don't give, I think, ourselves the right amount of time to reflect on that. We are really gifted. We are changing people's lives through what we teach. And as English teachers, again, I would say that this is like a double take. Because of the nature of what we teach, that is very comprehensive, right, in many aspects. And I would like to share, if you allow me, now that you mentioned this question of teaching, a very interesting piece of research that I came across, and I will be happy to share the full paper if you're interested in, on the evidence base for how learning happens. And this was a study that consolidated more than 20 years of research in many different areas of teaching, from pedagogy to psychology to philosophy of learning, and many, many different aspects. And what we know so far, and I will just try to summarize what you see right now on the screen, is that as humans, we are basically naturally wired for learning. But what about deep learning? When does deep learning happen? It only happens when we have and we take into account these three different areas that I'm sharing on the screen in color. Okay, so on one hand, let me just, I need to move the chat here so as to share the ideas. We've got the orange area, cognitive skills and competencies. I think that this is the area that we have developed the most throughout history of education, yes. We know that cognitive skills has to do with setting goals, with measuring achievements, with assessment, with problem solving, critical thinking, and so on and so forth. But deep learning only happens when the emotional sphere and the social and interpersonal spheres are developed at the same level, okay? Emotional skills related to recognizing our own emotions, managing, okay, those emotions, showing empathy, coping with frustration and stress. This is another huge aspect that we need to teach our students about. How to recover. Have you noticed that our students feel more and more and more often frustrated, and that they really struggle recovering from those frustrations, and they just give up? We need to teach them life skills, and perseverance and grit are life skills, basically. And the social, the one in yellow, the social and interpersonal realms are about collaboration, team working, empathy, building empathic teams, cooperating, navigating social situations, all the things that students will need for the world outside.
And compassion.
And compassion. So my point is, I think we have a deep understanding in terms of cognitive skills, assessment systems, and I think those are absolutely crucial. Don't get me wrong. Those are crucial. But we need to teach them to be compassionate, to deal with difficult situations, to help each other out, because the world outside the classroom is about those skills as well. And in many cases, we prepare students a lot for what happens within the four walls of the classroom. We need to take into account what is that will help them navigate the world outside. So then if you are interested, I can share this piece of research with you because it's a jewel.
Please do, Monica.
Yeah, I will be happy to. Then I will share with you my email address so that you can just be in contact with me and share questions or whatever you need. And another thing, because this is, I think, is one of the crucial questions we need to ask ourselves if we want to be realistic about the development of these skills, is how on earth do I do it? How on earth do I do it? I have no time in my classes. Does this ring a bell for you? I have no time. I never have time to cover content. Imagine in this situation, yeah? So how do I do it? Because, my dear teachers, maybe you have had a different kind of teacher training. At least in Argentina, even today, these dimensions are not part of our teaching training programs. So how do we do it? And this is where I want to share this concept of the tiny Twix principle. We need to start including very small changes, very small shifts within our same activities. Remember when, I don't know if it was Luz that was sharing this idea of the exit slips, and she came up with the idea of adapting the exit slip so as to include an emotional question. This is a perfect example of a tiny tweak. We don't have to go so big. What I'm suggesting is using 10 minutes a week of your English class to reflect about emotions, to bring up a game, to bring up a reflection, to bring up a video that you could share with your students and ask them questions and share information about social and emotional skills. This is one level, okay? When we create this is what I call interventions, okay? You bring a game, you share a video through WhatsApp and ask some questions about that video. When you bring a video about collaboration and you ask them, what do you think collaboration looks like? How does it look like in our classrooms now that we are online, for example, yeah? So this is one.
Sorry, Monica.
Yeah, the second level, and for me the most important, is using situations that happen in our classes all the time. How many times do you have to deal with conflict in your classes? How many times do you have to deal with disruption? How many times do you have to help your students reflect on themselves about their behavior? This is something that we teachers do all the time. So why not take these situations that happen every day in our classes as an opportunity to help them develop the emotional skills?
I was going to say, Monica, that maybe it was actually Silvina Velasquez from Argentina based in Colombia.
Yes.
And she says that now she's going to add the emotional component. So maybe she could briefly tell us what she does. Silvina, are you there? Silvina Velasquez?
Yes, I'm here. Hi, good morning, everybody. Can you hear me?
Tell us briefly what you do with your exit slips.
What I do is, because now I'm teaching virtual classes, and I'm teaching a virtual course I teach at the university level. And what I do is to present this exit slip. Well, before, when I had in-person classes, I used it at the end of the class, and now I use it at the end of every section. And so I ask them a number of questions, but I've omitted the emotional element that Monica is talking about. And I'll be happy to modify those exit slips, because I think that talking about emotions is crucial. And something that you mentioned about the class being for the students and not for us is something that sometimes we forget, and we mustn't. That's probably the number one thing that we should take into consideration when planning our classes, because the protagonists are our students, not us. So I think that that's something very, very important to take into account. And with regard to what you were just mentioning, I was writing a little bit about it, the video or a story, a thought-provoking, a proverb, why not, or a phrase that could be thought-provoking, that could trigger discussion or just a moment for reflection. And I think that those ideas could be used either as icebreakers at the beginning of the class, or to wrap up the class even. And there you wouldn't feel that I have to cover all this content and I don't have the time to use these activities or to pay attention to emotions, if you just incorporated something natural into your class. So I think it's totally doable.
Absolutely.
But we just need to be conscious of it.
Okay, that's the point. And this is precisely what my tiny Twix principle is about. And especially for us, teachers of English, we have already said how blessed we are, right? In terms of even the materials we use provide great opportunities for reflection on our emotional and social worlds. We know that in all textbooks, we have different sections about different cultures, about reading comprehension exercises, listening exercise. So we already have the basis. We don't have to work that much. That's my tiny Twix principle is about. And another thing, Silvina, I would like to add to this, to what you have just contributed, is this question of student centricity is essential these days when we are teaching online. And I know that, I don't know how you call it in your countries, here in Argentina, we call it continuidad pedagógica. That is the idea of the continuum in terms of the syllabus, in terms of the program and so on. But we really have to be prioritizing these days the human connection, okay? If you ask me, and I know that this is very controversial, that's why I will put it in my own personal opinion, is that this human connection these days should be priority number one, even over content. I do not believe in this question of one thing or the other. I think that through the content, we can definitely develop the skills, as if we are aware of it, as you are very well saying, Silvina. If we are, like, as I always say, awakened in the class, yes? But now that we have moved our teaching online with many different characteristics, because many of us might be blessed to have connection, to have synchronic classes with our students. And I know that many of you do not enjoy that benefit. And you are teaching 100% asynchronic classes through WhatsApp, through email to the parents. If you live in rural areas in Latin America, connectivity is only a dream. So we do have to cope with many different situations. But even though so, I would say that our priority should be in terms of the human aspect. Yes, in terms of keeping the most important elements that we have in teaching, that is our relationship, our bonding. Research tells us, and this is not me saying it, research has shared with us in many opportunities that the #1 thing that affects any learning process is our relationship with students. And this is over academic aspects, this is over content, this is over material. So in these times of uncertainty, the one thing that our students need the most is that we are still there for them, that the teacher has not vanished into thin air. And I am not inventing this. I have been in contact with many students in rural areas where they truly have no contact whatsoever with the teacher because they have no connection and so on. And students, especially young ones, have this fantasy that something happened to the school, that something happened to teachers, that they are no longer there. We really need to keep the bridge standing, the emotional bridge standing with our students. This is what they need the most, because we know that in face-to-face interactions, if the relationship is not strong, if we don't have the emotional aspect, no learning will happen, or at least only superficial learning will happen. Under these circumstances we are going through, I think it is very important that our students know that we are still there for them.
It is true, Monica. A couple of Sundays ago, we had this Ecuadorian teacher in our meetings, and she went to visit her students in a bicycle because she knew that some of them didn't have any connection. And she said that it was sort of a party when they saw her, when they heard her bicycle coming, and we were all, some of us cried because we were all the time complaining about what we don't have, what we need, without paying attention to other people who do more than the extra mile. Absolutely. Like this teacher.
Exactly, Jaime. I agree 100%. Let me give you another example. When I was working with this group of rural teachers, we were thinking about strategies on how to reach them at an emotional level. So one of the ideas that it was not me, I was there for them, but they came up with is one of the very limited contacts they had with students is when they sent them some kind of cuadernillo, like a set of copies with activities and so on. And so they sent this material by courier, okay? They sent this material by mail, post mail, not email, because they have no possibility of access. So what we did is teachers designed a very nice card, yes? Just a piece of paper that would go in an envelope, like a very short letter for each of the students, where the teacher was saying, I am proud of you. I know that we are not seeing each other and we are not in contact, but I'm thinking about you and I'm still here for you. And I hope you have fun with this material. And I hope that you are having a joyful time. And I am thinking about you. And this was a kind of message they were sending in this very short letter to students. And then we had the possibility of getting in touch with some of the students' parents through WhatsApp or through their personal email, yes, parents. And they said, you cannot imagine the face in my kids, the face my kids had how he felt when he read that note on an envelope from his or her teacher. It made a difference, and they felt motivated to do the homework, to do the activities, because somehow the bridge was over there again. It may sound as something very small and very simple, but this is another thing that we need to consider aligned with this tiny Twix principle. We teachers create impact with very small, tiny little things. Isn't that true? How many times have you felt a difference in the environment when you just step down, look into your young student's eye and ask them, how are you feeling today? How are you today? Not the automatic question of how are you, and I don't even look into your eyes when I ask you. If I look into your eyes and I ask you, how are you today? How can I help you today? It makes a whole of a difference for them. It is a tiny little things that we do as teachers that make a whole of a difference in students' lives. Remember that our students will not remember us for how well we taught the third conditional. They will remember us for many, many different things that have nothing to do with that. And I know that is absolutely important, is what we do, right? And we have to keep on doing it. The question is, how do we teach the third conditional?
Monica?
What aspects do we include? Yes, Lourdes.
Something I just noticed when you were giving us the examples is how important it is to look at the camera, because they are like looking, now I'm trying to look at the camera without looking at all the other participants, no? But it's so, it's a small action, but you connect with the students, especially if they are young learners, no? And I think what you just did, I think I could even feel it, no? And asking you, how are you? How are you feeling today? No? But not only like, how are you looking down, but just through the camera, no?
Because it's like a little trick. And I have to tell you, for example, my youngest daughter, Aileen, she has a terrific English teacher. And she does these kind of things even when she has to call someone's attention, okay? So I don't know, if I want to call Silvina's attention, she would just go near the camera and would say, Silvina, look at me, because they are first graders, okay? So she was, look at me, Silvina, look at me. Stop what you're doing, stop. Breathe with me, look at me, you know? And it's like a small thing, but it's like little tricks that we have to come up with at these times. We teachers are the most creative being on earth. So we'll always come up with different solutions, okay? That's why I don't believe so much in just sharing activities with you, because you can create 1,000 activities once we become aware of the importance of these elements, right?
Right.
I don't know. Stop sharing so that I can see all of you.
Have some time to drink some water. We have 25 people here. Anybody has a question, a comment, something to say, a confession, group therapy? I'm about to say something. You made our feelings arise and come out.
That's the idea. Let's raise them.
De Silvina Velázquez, para todos. I'm inspired. Irma Guzman from Ecuador. The fact that our students and ourselves are dealing with death, to connect with our students. Death bring us out so many. Maybe Irma Guzman, she has a lot of experience. You could say something that, you could say, tell us something, Irma Guzman from Ecuador.
Hi. Well, not really a question. My comment was related to the fact that one of the feelings that we need to recognize in ourselves and in our students is how they react to death. And that's why I made the comment about dealing with death. Maybe we have our students happy one class, but then in the next class, somebody had suffered a death in the family because COVID-19 is still out there. We cannot deny it. And absolutely. Since we're doing online classes, we don't have the advantage of being in an environment that we can see and control the faces of our students, or trying to guess what's happening in the mind of that student, because, you know, it's a different setting. So what I'm saying is, based on the everything that Monica has been explaining and how to connect with the classes, and at the same time trying to break with the old traditional model, is like, yes, icebreakers, like you mentioned it, Monica. It's not, how are you? Fine, thank you. No, that's an automatic, that's not the real question. It's like, how are you feeling today? Or what had happened in your family yesterday? Or what was the most important situation that your family faced during the last weekend? Those are three different styles or questions that should be included. And that also make us break our old models of how to organize questions to our students, because not only the illnesses, the contagious, but also the death. And death is very difficult to deal with, to face, and worst, to overcome. And depending on the range of the age of our students, I'm dealing with adults, and it's difficult, even for adults, to put in words the feelings. And we all know that different authors talk about, you know, the emotional component. You need to reduce it in order for having our students with peace in mind, so they will be able to understand the question, understand the class, and develop. So that was really the comment.
Absolutely, Irma. And I would like to add a couple of things to these comments and these ideas you are sharing, which are very, very important. The first one is, we really need to be very respectful these times of our students' emotional realities, because we truly have no idea what they are going through, aligned to what you said. So we need to be extremely respectful. But I think that it might also be an opportunity if we bring up, first of all, remember that talking about our feelings is always an invitation, okay? It's not that we force students to talk about their feelings. We just invite them. We create a certain atmosphere. We trigger some questions, and we invite, if anyone wants to share something personal or something related to their own realities, because we really need to be very respectful. But these things might definitely come up in our classes. So I think it's also very important to bring, in this case, the social element of social and emotional learning. That is, if someone has suffered a loss, or if someone has heard about something and they feel affected by that, how can we support as a community? How can we support you at these moments? How can we encourage you to be present with your own emotions and to go through these moments, okay? So this is another very important element, because imagine the opportunities we might have in that situation that you are going through, Irma, to talk about empathy, yes? To talk about what is it that we can do to help someone feel a little bit, if not better, not alone. And this is a big thing in this pandemic, not feeling alone. Even if we, and this is something, a concept that I constantly repeat these days, we are going through social distancing. It does not necessarily imply emotional distancing. Yes, Irma? So through all these strategies that you were thinking about, we can also help someone feel that they are not alone. And I think that this is one of the best contributions we can create in these times, right?
Thank you so much, Monica. There is somebody else, Mónica Maribel Ponce Quinchuela. Do you want to express your idea, Monica, by yourself, or you want me to read it? Mónica Maribel Ponce. Mónica Maribel, are you there? Monica? Well, she wrote, strong emotions and feelings put people down, just that many people react differently. The activity to be done is try to notice that each one has something we know previously as teachers on our report, so we have to be acquainted with it. Besides, ourselves have to be doing and stop to our report, so we have to be acquainted with. Besides, ourselves have to be doing and stop to our emotions to help others, and that is shocking. What are some of the things we can do? Make some suggestions so we can recognize and apply.
So basically, I think the question is related to recognizing our own emotions, because remember that what I say is that in order to try to modify a difficult emotion or an afflictive emotion, we first have to recognize it, yes? To give ourselves the time and the space and the permission to feel, as I always say. For example, the first exercise we did together, remember the one with colors that I shared, the scale? This is an emotional check-in. In order for you to choose your number in both scales, you naturally had to go into yourselves, ask yourself some questions, and reflect on your state today, at this moment. Yes? So the emotional check-in is a very good strategy that you can adapt in different ways to different ages. So the emotional check-in for younger students might be only with colors, okay? Not with numbers. So what color do you feel identified with and why? Because it's not only about what color are you in now, but why do you feel like this? Another question that is very useful for our students: how do you feel this emotion in our body? All emotions represent themselves differently in our body. Let me just give you the typical example, that is anger. When we are very, very angry, we might feel like choked, like we cannot speak. We can feel like a hit in our head. Some other students represent that emotion in here, in the chest, in the heart. Some other students feel that their hands are burning. There are many different manifestations. So asking ourselves and our students, what do I feel in my body when I feel like this? Let me just take this into our world as teachers for our own well-being. Anxiety being one of the most common emotions felt these days. What do you feel in your bodies when you feel anxious? Can you share with me in the chat? Where do you feel it? Do you feel it in your breathing being faster? Do you feel it in your mind? How do you feel anxiety representing itself in your body? In the stomach, says Irma, for example. In the chest, says Tom, and maybe your breathing pace, right? Where else do you feel anxiety in your body, in your head? Okay. Then I will go a little bit deeper and ask you, okay, do you feel it in your head? What exactly do you feel in your head? Yes? Headaches in your chest, in your breathing, in your stomach, in your head. This is very important. Why am I asking you all these questions? Because all these things that you are sharing with me in the chat, is your body telling you about an afflictive emotion. It's your alert system. My point being, next time you start feeling the same thing in your body, you are receiving a message. It's a message of, I am anxiety and I am here now with you. I am representing in your head or in your stomach, or so it is your alert system. Whenever you feel these things again, you know that anxiety is creeping in. So we need to think, what do we do? Because anxiety will not disappear. Fear will not disappear. Unsatisfaction will not disappear. But we can turn the volume down. How? Through connecting with those more elevated emotions. So next time you feel anxiety, ask yourself a question to remember something that brings you joy. Ask yourself a question such as, what am I grateful for today? Gratitude is one of the best antidotes. In fact, before we finish, I have a game for us to play on gratitude, okay? So gratitude is one of the best antidotes. If you interrupt anxiety with a gratitude thought or a gratitude memory, you will start turning down the volume of anxiety. It will not disappear. It will be unrealistic for me to tell you that it will disappear, but you can turn the volume down. So you've got your sign in your body, and then you need to think, how do I connect to an emotion that will help me cope better with anxiety? You know why? Because I had to be 100% honest with you. And I think that these conditions that we are going through will not change in the short term. So we really have to develop coping strategies, because anxiety will continue being here. Death rates will continue being here. Have you heard these days there is a new term that is doom surfing? Have you heard about these terms? One is doom surfing and another one is doom scrolling. Doom surfing and doom scrolling. What do you think these terms refer to? They refer to another term that it's infoxication. I know that being informed is extremely important. We know that fear, the fear we are feeling is real, okay? This is an illness that is very dangerous for our health and the health of the ones we love. So it is real. But if we are all the time connected to the death rates constantly, if you turn on the news, yes, they will constantly be sharing information about death rates. And I know we have to be informed, but we have to be selective on how this information also affects our level of energy as humans, right? I'm not saying that we should not watch the news, but be selective on the type of information that we consume, okay?
Dear Monica, there is one final comment, because here in Peru it's 11, but over there in Argentina it's lunchtime, and she has a family. She has a family to take care of. Thanks a lot. Tom. Tom?
Yep. Hello. Hi, Monica. Thank you so much for, thanks so much for your presentation today. It's been wonderful. Just so much good content and some really fantastic contributions today. Definitely. I love the idea of the slip-in. Like, one thing I do in the cool down of a class is to ask feedback. It's a great idea ask how they're feeling about it. So that's really cool. One thing you mentioned about this thing, I'd never heard of doom scrolling, doom surfing, but I can understand what I can read between the lines what it means, and I think it's so true. I think that as human beings, actually, we look for security, and the ironic thing is security can be in insecurity. So actually, in certain emotions, like we all have our base emotions that we go to, whether it's sadness, whether it's anger, and these types of things. So some people, they feel most at home in their comfortable home when they're sad. So if they're not sad and they're positive, then perhaps, that's just one example, then they need to go and find something to make them feel sad again, because that's their home. It's much nicer to be in the home of feeling sad or feeling angry. So some people might go and read the news to make themselves feel angry about a certain issue, because it feels their need to feel a certain emotion, because they feel most at home in that particular emotion. And it's about trying to break that cycle and understanding, reflecting on yourself and understanding where your base emotion is. Is it sadness? Is it anger? Where do you live? Where do you live in a place of being grateful? Because obviously, naturally, we all know it doesn't take a genius. It's a much happier place to be in a place of feeling grateful and blissful. But also,
but you don't feel like that all the time. That would be
no. Sorry, I hadn't finished actually, Monica. Thank you. Is that also what I thought was really refreshing is the fact that you opened it up and said that we shouldn't feel guilty for feeling sad. We shouldn't feel guilty for feeling like that. It's also natural in these testing times to feel like that. So I think the old I don't know, philosophy of stop these feelings of sadness and all this stuff, blocking these feelings. Actually, no, it's about, as you said, it's about de-intensifying those feelings, is recognizing it and building coping strategies, not blocking the emotions. It's actually being aware of it, embracing sadness and thinking, how can I respect those feelings, but turn them into something positive?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, Tom. And something that I would like to adapt to your idea is, as teachers, we need to really have to be careful about our own well-being during these times. Because one of the things that has happened to not only teachers, but in general, is that we have turned into like the overproductivity mode, right? And we are constantly doing. When we are doing, we are not being. And as teachers, we really need to be careful of our own levels of energy, because these are very difficult times. So let's reflect about how we organize our day, how we create, and I know it's really very difficult, but think about how to create these little pockets of wellness during the day, so that we are not so overexhausted. Yes? Like if you have a 5-minute break between different classes, do not stay in the computer. Just get up, get some fresh air, drink something, hug your pets, have your kids, if you've got kids at home, connect to the things that bring you joy, because our levels of wellness will definitely impact how we cope with the whole situation, how we keep up with our delivery as teachers, yes, that is being really under a lot of pressure these days. So my dear teachers, please think about taking moments for yourselves during the day to recycle, renew your energy, to dance a little bit, to sing, to eat a chocolate, to do a 5-minute yoga exercise, to do a 5-minute breathing exercises, short things during the day that will help our wellness level. And if we feel a little bit better, not ecstatic, because that would be crazy, right? These times, but a little bit better, you will be also able to share more with your students and to be more available for the people around you, whether it is your students or your family. So do take your time to take care of yourselves, please.
Dear Monica, on behalf of all the group, we want to thank you and express our big and deep gratitude, because these 2 hours have been full of peace, full of reflection, full of gratitude, of compassion for ourselves. And I think that we all agree with you. And we would like to ask you, please, to be with us in a couple of months, please, when you are a little bit free. So I'm so sorry for stealing your time from your family on a Sunday morning. And thank you very much for all the great and marvelous pieces of advice you have given to all of us. And I'm sure that from now on, we will be different human beings. Thanks a lot, dear Monica.
Thank you, Jaime. For me, it is always a pleasure to share, even if it is on a Sunday, midday. I'm always happy to share, because again, I think that creating these spaces, and I would also like to share and to thank you, Jaime, deeply for creating these interchange spaces. Yes, we've had the opportunity of learning from each other. I have learned a lot from you as well today. We are a community, and we really need to encourage these community spaces. So the only thing I can say is, whenever I share and I meet teachers like yourselves from all over the world, I am also connected to my purpose. So you know what they say, that the best thing about giving is the feeling you get, that in fact is a little bit selfish. So I'm living today greatly honored and really uplifted through sharing with you. Okay, so let's be in touch. It will be my pleasure to see you again whenever you feel like it. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, dear Monica, and thank everyone who has been here. And see you soon, dear Monica. We will follow you. You will have more followers around the world now. Thank you, everyone. And see you next Sunday with Lisa Wakefield from the USA, who will be talking about reaching all your students by differentiating instruction.
Very important.
Yeah. Okay, see you. Thank you very much, Monica. Thank you, Tom.
Have a great Sunday. Bye-bye.
Gloria, Nora, Raj.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this one.
Thank you, Monica.
Bye.
Stay safe. Stay safe.
Ariana, Irma, Katia.
Thank you.
Priscila, Malena, Ruth, Moises, Monica.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Jaime, as Tom would say, photo.
Photo, yes. Let me stop sharing.
Yes, thanks a lot, dear. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Jaime. Thank you very much.
Thank God. Thank God.
Thank you, Jaime.
And 10 people like Monica. Thanks a lot. Could you, now we need, we can do this first. Okay, this photo. Okay, 1, 2, and wait, I'm not. 1, 2, and 3.
Yay!
Okay. Wait, again. 1, 2, and. Okay, thank you very much. See you next Sunday. Thank you, Monica.
Thank you, Monica.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Fantastic.
Now, go and cook, go and do the washing up and the cleaning, please.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Jaime.
Bye-bye, Raj.
Bye, Jaime. See you next Sunday.
See you. And happy birthday last Sunday.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Goodbye. Nobody wants to go. Come on, we have work to do.
No, we have things to do. Yeah.
Dear Monica and Jaime, thanks a lot.
No, thank you, Luz.
See you next time. Bye-bye. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. Very